You're a Jedi Knight, aren't you?
What makes you think that?
I saw your laser sword. Only Jedis carry that kind of weapon.
Perhaps I killed a Jedi and took it from him.
I don't think so. No one can kill a Jedi.
I wish that was so.
Welcome, Masters and Padawans, to episode 629 of Full of Sith. It's me, Brian Young, a host of the show. Holly Fry couldn't make it this week, but I've got a special guest co-host this week to join me. You might remember he's been on the show before. We've got Stephen Tillman, the Star Wars guru, if anyone's familiar with him and his site and Facebook page and whatnot. Stephen, thanks for joining us again.
Man, I really appreciate it. Thanks for having me back.
It was really fun to talk to you last time, and I realize it's been a while since you were on last, and I figured it was about time to have you back.
Man, I'm glad to be back. Glad to be here. So much has happened since then too, you know?
Yeah. Like we're right in the middle of Maul Shadow Lord, Mando and Grogu's coming out like almost exactly a month from now as we record this. So much Star Wars has come out in 2 years, which I went back and looked. It's been you were on the show in 2024, which is crazy to me to think about because it felt like it was like it didn't feel like it was that long since we talked like this. I mean, we catch each other online now and again, like on comments and stuff, but it didn't feel like it's been that long since we talked.
Man, in Star Wars terms, what was going on in 2024?
I feel like we were talking a lot about Acolyte, to be honest.
Man,
Um,
I love that show.
yeah, me too. Um, yeah, Star Wars 2024, they announced Mando and Grogu. They announced Ahsoka season 2. They announced Skeleton Crew. And yeah, the Acolyte and Bad Batch and Tales of the Empire were dropped. So we kind of got Barriss Offee's Redemption. We got Bad Batch finishing up, and then yeah, Acolyte. But so we've had Skeleton Crew since then. Andor season 2 is finished up. We've got uh, another season of Star Wars Visions, which was really cool. I don't know. In that time, has there been anything that's been like that's sort of taken over your interest?
The Acolyte, to be honest with you. I
Since
want
then?
and Skeleton Crew. And Skeleton Crew.
Yeah, Skeleton Crew was a lot of fun.
And plus I just love Jude Law. So seeing him in Star Wars and the thing is too, I get iffy whenever they get somebody really, really famous, like a big name actor to star, at least like a main character type. But man, Jude knock that out the park, man. And I need season two or something. I need to see him again. Maybe a
Yeah.
prequel, something.
I share that kind of that feeling where it's like, oh man, somebody really famous is stepping in. That could be iffy, but he although he was very primary on the show, it did feel like he kind of took a back seat to the kids. And the kids were so good that he and the droid, right? SM-33, like they were all so good that he never felt like he was overpowering it with being Jude Law. Like he really was a supporting player to all of them.
And that's actually what I like about a lot of the Star Wars shows, which I'm starting to realize, especially being online for so many years now, and I'm sure you see this too. Usually, I'm like the opposite of what everybody else is saying, which I don't know how that happens, but it usually is. I like when stories star somebody, and then not necessarily they take a backseat, but they're not the main focus. For example, like Book of Boba Fett. I know a lot of people were like, "Man, well, why didn't they focus on Boba the whole time?" Well, I like my shows like that. Whenever it's okay, same with with Maul right now, right? I like that it's his show, but I like that they focus on a lot of the side characters. And to me, that's whenever a Star Wars show is at its best. Whenever, yeah, this is this person's show, but give me the, give me the sides, with my main course too, right?
Which is interesting. I kind of feel like Star Wars has always been like that, where and I think Star Wars fans should kind of be used to that, where if and I know you came into Star Wars sort of like later, but like for
Yeah.
Star Wars fans going way back, when we had like just the original trilogy, people ate up all those side stories, right? Like every Cantina alien had their own story at that point, and every time people, when the special editions came out, by that time they'd filled so much of that old expanded universe with stories about all those characters that people were just like, well, I want to see that side character's story and that side character's story and that side character's story. And so like all of the side characters getting stories feels like something the fans have been asking for so long. And now that we're sort of getting that, um, that people are sort of going like, no, no, not like that, feels kind of strange.
Yeah,
But
and then, sorry,
oh
but
no,
yeah,
go ahead.
that's actually one of the things I feel like in the past 5, 6 years, it's changed on the internet, especially because I post a lot, of characters, right, especially on Facebook. But I've noticed that over the years, if I post a minor character, I get a bunch of comments like, "Who is this person? Why are you posting?" I'm like, where did this change? I thought this is what we loved as Star Wars fans, that I'm posting background character number 32, and I'm giving their entire story, and now all of a sudden it's a problem now.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. I haven't encountered that as much except for in the narrative. Like I've heard that about Book of Boba Fett. I've heard that about um I haven't heard that about Maul yet. I don't know like if you're telling me that's not something I've encountered yet, but I've been also pretty busy with work, so I haven't been paying attention to the online chatter as much as just putting out my work and um not necessarily paying attention to that, and people don't direct the hate at me the way they used to. Um, but like with Maul, I really love, like to your point, how they've done that because I was really nervous that Maul was going to be, George Lucas talked about how Star Wars kind of really needs to be about hope and things like that.
Mhm.
And Maul is a character who really doesn't have hope in his
Yeah.
life. And seeing them balance Maul with characters like Devin, like Brander Lawson, like her master, Docky, like it really creates a narrative that stays true to Star Wars, but also stays true to Maul in a way that's really great storytelling. Um, Although I have seen a lot of people upset that I think they were expecting Darth Talon in a bikini, and they got Devin, who's like a Padawan, and that's not what they wanted, and so they've been reacting a little bit poorly to that. I've definitely seen that.
Well, I've definitely seen the online speculation about this being Darth Talon, his backstory, and which if that happens to be the case, then I'm all for it too. But I like, I don't know, I like my food cooked, right? So I don't like them just rushing into it and serving me something that's cold. So I mean, you got to give the story time to build up. I feel like, and I feel like we're just, especially as a society in general, I feel like we're so impatient. We just want it now instead of, going through, the storytelling, the journey, right? And
Yeah,
to speak on your idea of, the idea of hope in Star Wars, I think we benefit, especially with the Darth Maul show, of the timeline. We know where Maul's journey ends, right? So I think this timeline that we're in, that the story that we're telling is perfect because I think at the end of the day, there is, like you said, there's not going to be really any hope for Maul. Like we know where his journey is going to end, so it can't be hopeful for Maul. Not can it be hopeful for the other side characters like Devin, Lawson? Yeah, sure, right. But for Maul, I think because of the timeline and where we're at, I really don't think we're going to have to worry too much about, is Maul going to go down the path of he's the good guy now, right? Because I heard that with Book of Boba Fett too. A lot of people, don't like how they made Boba quote unquote a good guy, which I've never, in my head, I've never seen him as a good guy or a bad guy, to be honest with you, in general. So I feel like Boba Fett sticks to his character. I mean, he's still, towing the line of what's legal and what's not, and what's
Yeah.
not.
I've been thinking a lot about that Book of Boba Fett show, and it took me a while to kind of like really understand what I liked about it. And somebody asked me about it, and this actually came up like a few days ago in a conversation, and somebody said that they didn't understand why Boba Fett, made the decision that he did. They're like, the people who made that show didn't understand how criminals work, and Boba Fett just wasn't acting like a criminal boss. Like, what was that? Like, they didn't explain why he wasn't being a criminal. And I just kind of had to look at them and say, you kind of missed the reason for all the flashbacks, right? Like, Boba Fett, like, the reason I loved actually the journey Boba Fett goes on is that, like, I don't know, like Boba Fett's such an interesting character, and they're kind of doing with Boba Fett what they did with Maul, and like gave him depth and nuance. Like, um, Boba Fett was this kid who lost his dad when he was too young and went after some really terrible role models, right? Like when you lose your dad, your family that young, and Jango Fett was a lot of things, but he seemed like a genuinely good father despite his choice of profession, right?
Yeah,
And then you go from like Jango Fett to Cad Bane and Aurra Singh, probably not going to do well for your like, well-being. And then Boba Fett does his thing, working for Jabba the Hutt, goes into the Sarlacc, which is probably a tremendously traumatic experience, almost dies, and then sort of learns this new idea of family from these people who saved his life that undoubtedly he would have died of exposure had the Tuskens not rescued him.
yeah,
And he goes through this experience where the Pikes are just killing them indiscriminately and then rescues them, and the Pikes just massacre them. And it's very much in Boba Fett's character to like get that revenge, and he realizes that like it's not just the Pikes, it's all of the criminals and the people who he was working for doing this, not just to the Tuskens, but like everybody on Tatooine. Like that change in him where he's just like, fine, like I'm taking all this stuff back from Jabba anyway. I know what that world is. I know how I can take out Bib Fortuna. I'm just going to do this, not just for all the rest of the Tuscans on the planet, but for the people around this area, and do something about this because I'm pissed about what they did to these people that saved me. That made perfect sense to me. And the more I think about that show in that context, the more Boba Fett's change like makes perfect sense to me.
yeah, and I also like to look at it. I feel like from a perspective of I don't know how to put this, so I'm just going to put it as bluntly as I can here. I grew up around people who were criminals, who were probably unsavory people in areas that maybe a lot of fans probably didn't have to live through. I was born in Oak Cliff, uh, in Waco. It's not, the best area either, but you talk to some of the people that I've grew up with or hung out with who had to do what they had to do to live. They don't like this life. They don't enjoy it. This isn't what they want to do. They're doing it because hey, this is what I got to do to survive. And that's how I've always looked at Boba Fett. I looked at Boba Fett. He was some little kid who basically who had to grow up a lot sooner than a lot of other individuals. Right? His dad was living a life that a lot of us wouldn't probably want to live with a kid. And like you said, I mean, the people he had in his life, Aura Singh, like, come on now, Aura Singh being your mother figure, you're not gonna grow up, very good. I'll just put it like that. But seeing how he was as a grown man, even in the comics, whether it be the canon comics, even some of the expanded universe comics. I mean, to me, they've always portrayed Boba as having some maybe a twisted sense of honor, but like still some sense of honor that where it was like, man, yeah, this dude, yeah, he'll kill you probably for something, but I mean, he's not actively going around. He's not a Sidious, right? He's
Yeah.
not he's not someone like that. He is someone that as long as I wasn't crossing him or being disrespectful to him, he's not finna just come up in here and just kill me like that, you know?
Yeah.
And that's how I've always looked at Boba Fett. I think a lot of people, and there's a interview that George did where he was talking about how people don't want like comic book sidekicks. They just want something tough like Terminator. And I think that's the issue with a lot of Star Wars. And I'm not saying that is an issue. I don't want to just say these people have issues, right? But a lot of people, I mean, they just like the the bad guy, right? I mean, I love the bad guys too. I have Sith tattoos, so I mean, I don't want to sound hypocritical here, but even I realize that, hey, some of these characters have more than just being, you know, I'm just gonna shoot up the place or I'm just gonna lightsaber somebody down. And to me, that makes somebody more relatable, right?
Yeah.
Whenever it's like I don't think I could ever put my shoes in Darth Sidious's, right?
Hmm.
Right? I don't
Yeah.
think I could ever do that. But could we possibly do that to a Boba Fett or a Jango Fett? I feel like hell yeah, I could. You know, if I was in his situation, maybe I would do some of the same things he did too. And then as I'm getting older, I don't want to keep living this lifestyle. Like I don't want to quote him word for word, but I think he even said in the book of Boba Fett where he was like, I'm tired of working for people who don't care about me, right?
Yeah.
I'm just
Yeah.
I'm just some bounty hunter to them. Why would somebody like Boba Fett want to just be a Boba Fett his whole life, right?
Yeah.
To me, it only makes sense that hey, man, this is my time to get what I feel like I'm owed.
Yeah. No, that's one of the things I really like about what they're doing with Maul too, where Maul is sort of coming to different understandings about what he was and how he was a tool and how he was used and abused and discarded by Sidious, right? And his sort of journey through the different phases of his life has been really fascinating. Like in Clone Wars, where he's like, oh man, like I was trained to have a piece of the pie of this power and help enact this grand plan. So he puts together the Shadow Collective. And then he's like, what? Well, that didn't work. Because Sidious just comes, kills his brother, and it's just like, no, you're a rival now. I'm not gonna let that happen. And then he realizes, like, no, I think Sidious was doing something that's only going to benefit him. Like he doesn't share that power, so I'm going to rob him of his next apprentice. Right? I loved that speech at the end of Clone Wars where he tries to convince Ahsoka that Anakin's going to be his next apprentice and that they need to team up to kill him. Because like there's no lie, right? Like I love when Maul
And
is honest because he's
and and,
like, this
and,
is
and
we need to do this.
and to me, that is the best way you can do somebody like him, especially because it reminds me of in episode two when Dooku was trying to persuade Obi-Wan,
Oh
and
yeah.
literally he just told him the truth. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I love when Sith characters just tell the truth. Where it's like, bro, I have nothing to hide from you. This is how it is, man. I'm telling you this. Granted, you're probably not gonna believe me because if memory serves correct, because I haven't watched season seven in a while. I know that's bad, right? But I almost want to say he almost had Ahsoka. I think Ahsoka said she was almost, gonna fall for this until he brought up Anakin. She's like,
Yeah.
Anakin would never do something like that.
Yep.
Like you had me, bro. Like I was fixing to, lay down my lightsaber. Me and you was fixing to hold hands and walk out this place together. Right.
Yeah,
And
until
then
you said Anakin was
yeah.
gonna join the dark side, like that's absurd.
And to me that tells you something too, where someone that we've we've grown to love for years, right? With Ahsoka, Ahsoka literally was gonna side with Maul, and I think people miss that, right? Where it's like she was literally finna side with this dude. And like if he would have left out the Anakin part, man, this would have gone into a whole what if like Marvel,
Yeah.
right?
That's what I've really enjoyed about the Maul Shadow Lord show so far is Devin is sort of torn between those two worlds where like Master Daki is almost like he's lived too long in the era of the Republic where he's still very rigid in his code, and Devin's just like this is not the way we're going to be able to survive. And Maul is there really, again, like kind of just telling the truth, where it's just like, listen, like Palpatine hates us both. Like Sidious is not he hates us both equally, and we may have different views of the Force, but like we're both equally hated and despised by this empire, and this empire hates everybody. And then you've got like Brander Lawson there, and it's almost like the kids' version of Andor with what Lawson's going through, right? Trying to keep the Empire out of his city because he knows that as soon as those fascists show up, they're not leaving.
And that's it's funny that you bring up how how her master's stuck in his old ways. I was actually having this conversation with one of my friends that I put on Star Wars. He's like hardcore into Star Wars like me, so me and him can have these type of conversations, right? Daki, her master, I hate to say it, but his way of thinking, his wanting to still hold to those values, I feel like is going to be detrimental to him, right? I haven't read any spoilers. I mean, I haven't seen any sneak peeks. I don't know how this is going to go, but just whenever he told her like, "Hey, we don't steal," right? Like that's not what we do. We can rely on the kindness of others in this time period. Those type of Jedi survivors don't survive for long. Look at somebody like Kanan, whenever he was surviving, especially in A New Dawn, that novel. He
Yeah,
was a drunk. Dude was going out having bar fights. You can't survive in this time period. I hate to say it, as much as people love the Jedi and want them to succeed. That line of thought, how Uncle Docky is thinking, is really going to get him killed. At least in my opinion, it's like, dude, you can't hope to survive off of just those ideals anymore. I mean, the at least to me, the Jedi that do survive are the ones who are doing everything that they were taught not to do.
yeah,
And I think that's going to be very important to the story, especially with Devin. I mean, I think a lot of people have to realize too, she's a teenager. This lady, well, not really lady, this girl is like really impressionable, right? So
yeah,
I mean, she's hearing, how her master is saying on one shoulder, don't do this, and then Maul, saying that, hey, look, man, like look, like we're like you said, we're both hated. And I think Maul is gonna slowly more and more show her how to survive, right?
yeah,
And as a kid, especially if I was a kid in this time period, man, I want to survive. I
yeah,
love my master, and all that too. But like, if what my master's telling me isn't working, but what this other dude who y'all have been telling me is bad, and he's all this, but man, everything he's doing just proves to be right. I might have to change my thought process and be like, hey man, Maul has a point here, and I think that's where Devin's gonna start to realize, and I do think she's gonna. I'm just gonna make my own theory. I do think she's gonna fall for. I was gonna say fall for his lies, but in this instance, I think she's gonna fall for his truths. You know?
yeah. It's interesting that um it feels very much like an echo of Revenge of the Sith, right? Like where Anakin goes to Yoda and says, "What do I do about Padme?" And well, not Padme by name, but
Yeah, yeah,
what do I do about someone I think I've seen these visions of the future and I'm going to lose them? And Yoda's answer is correct, but it's not comforting, right? It's like, well, just train yourself to lose her, which is what a Jedi is supposed to be able to do. But, when you tell someone who's that emotionally attached to someone, like, yeah, just like she's going to die, man, like you get over it. that doesn't help the realistic like aspects of the situation. He goes to Palpatine, and Palpatine's like, I'll help you save her, man. And that feels so much more comforting and safe. And that's kind of the situation that Devon's in, where she's, with Master Daki, and he's like, we're gonna be hungry and we're gonna be cold, but we're gonna do this right. And we might be homeless, but we're gonna help people, and we're gonna try to survive in a way that stays true to our values. And she's going to Maul, and Maul's just like, we're going to do what we have to do to survive, and it doesn't matter who gets in the way. It feels like that same push pull, and that's what's so compelling, I think, about Anakin's story, and what I think is going to be so compelling about Devon's story, as we get to see it, because we know we've got another season coming, and I don't think this is giving anything away. Like, I've seen the first 8 episodes of Maul, um, and there's no way, like, it's not giving anything away to say they don't wrap up anything about that dilemma. Like, we'd have to get a season two, and they've already announced it. But like, um, I think that's what makes those stories so compelling. Is just like, we're going to see how that plays out, how they make those choices, and yeah, no, like, I just really love it. That's one of the things I love about Star Wars, is seeing people put in those positions, and why I think George Lucas was so right about putting that stuff in there, and what makes those things so scary. Like Maul and Sidious, like you were saying earlier, like, yeah, I have a hard time imagining myself being Sidious and just being evil all the time, but it's way easier for me to imagine myself as Anakin in that situation, and going that far to the dark side to protect somebody I love, or being Devin in that situation and going that far to the dark side to, for self-preservation.
Yep. And I think, and what's amazing about how those stories are told is because I don't care how virtuous you are, how righteous you think you are. I feel like being in someone's shoes like Devin or Anakin, I feel like even we can, like you said, sort of put ourselves in their shoes. You can replace Anakin's dilemma with, instead of Padme, I mean, it could be your mom, right?
Yeah.
Your kids, your husband, your boyfriend, your girlfriend. I mean, it could be anybody that we hold deeply to. And it's like, man, what would I do to, because I like to imagine in my head, right, that I would do anything for the ones I love, right? And I imagine you would do the same thing for the ones you love, but how far would we go, right? Like, how far would you go for your parents, your siblings, your children, right? And and I think those are ideas or questions that we can all relate to,
Yeah.
because, like you said, I feel like someone who has never broken the law, who has lived on a straight and narrow their entire life, but then you put them in a situation where, hey, I just got showed a vision that, that my mom was gonna die, and it ended up happening, so now I'm already on edge, right, with my next visions, and now I'm seeing my wife, like you, like Yoda. I can't just learn to let that go, man.
Yeah.
And I think that's, and granted, I know Yoda was just given the Jedi answer, but I also feel like that's one of Yoda's flaws too, where it's like Yoda should have recognized it, especially coming from someone as emotionally unstable as Anakin. I mean, you have to give this man some like real talk. And I'm not saying he wasn't giving him some real talk already, but it's like, dude, all right, let me take off the Jedi Master robe real quick, right? All right, let me just give you Yoda to Anakin, and I think that's a lot. That goes a lot to show you just even the failures of someone like Yoda, who who we hold as fans, to like the highest esteem. But I think at the end of the day, especially with the prequels and the Clone Wars TV show, I mean, we're supposed to look at this, at least to me, in my opinion, how like this is like Yoda isn't doing a good job at this. And I know that's probably sounds like blasphemy, but like the council and Yoda, Mace Windu and all, I mean, they didn't make a lot of the right decisions, I think, which led to, Sidious being able to easily influence and take over, and not just with Anakin, but just other Jedi in general too. Like,
You know,
Jedi who would become the Inquisitors, even people like a Pon Krell, right?
yeah,
And I think, uh, if we look at it from the lens of George is trying to show us in the prequels how the Jedi aren't doing things right, that's how we should look at it. And I think that's why the prequels get a lot of flack too, because we're, at least a lot of fans are looking at it as, the Jedi are supposed to be perfect heroes, like Anakin, like nobody can kill a Jedi type, right?
I
But
wish that were
we
so.
really, yeah, yeah, I wish that were so. Like the Jedi can never make a mistake, right? I I feel like the same answer to Anakin. I wish that, well, that Qui-Gon said, I wish that were so, because we're really seeing the failures of the Jedi, and I think that failure even starts in a show like Acolyte, right? Where
Yeah,
we see how the Jedi cover up, and they're so easy to blame Soul, because that, and not to go on a rambling real quick too, but like in universe, if I'm not, if I'm understanding this correctly, in universe, we're led to believe that Soul will go down in history as like a traitor, right?
yeah,
Like this
yeah.
dude killed a bunch of Jedi. This, like, if I'm in Anakin's time and I'm reading about Soul, Soul is like this evil, crazy Jedi that went and like betrayed his entire order.
Yep,
And
yep,
and God, that sucks, right?
yeah. I mean, he had his problems, but he did not murder a bunch of Jedi because he went like that. Oh man, I hope they find a way to continue that story. But yeah, you're right. It's interesting to note too, there were a lot of fans when the prequels came out, especially when Attack of the Clones came out, where everybody was really into Yoda finally fighting with a lightsaber. But there were a lot of fans too that were like, the Yoda I know would never pick up a lightsaber. And, you kind of had to explain to him, like, hey, the Yoda that you know that would never pick up a lightsaber had to learn that lesson. And they had to learn that lesson the hard way. There's a reason that Yoda didn't go back for his lightsaber after losing to Sidious, where it's like, that's not how we win this war. Um, you know, the the Yoda of Empire Strikes Back needed to spend, 20 years on Dagobah going, becoming the one who understands that wars aren't what make a person great. And it took a lot of that time. It took everything out of him after 800 years of doing things one way. I guess 20 years is a blip to a guy like him, but it took losing everything for him to finally understand that.
And to me, Star Wars has been one of the best franchises to show us that our heroes have flaws. And this
Yeah.
will probably be a touchy subject here because I know it always is, but I will stand on this, man, till the day I die. The Last Jedi, not even just The Last Jedi, but just the sequels in general, their portrayal of Luke is so real. Like, as a fan, do I want to see Luke create the new Jedi Order and just going ham on screen, against Darksiders? Hell yeah, I would love that. I'm not gonna. I feel like everybody would love that, right? But just realistically, it just that's not how real life works. I've known people who who have overcame so many traumas only to at the end of their day they fall right back to where they were to begin with. And does it suck? Hell yeah. Especially seeing people you look up to like that, where it's like, man, like what happened to this person? What happened to this guy? What happened to this girl? Like they were so they had it so together back then now, and now seeing them how they are now, it's disappointing, right? You don't want to see your heroes like that, but man, the way that Luke secluded himself. There's actually a comment that somebody recently posted on the Guru page. They were saying we're like, and I didn't respond to it, which is actually I'm going to respond to it right now in this podcast. They said it doesn't make sense that Luke would just abandon Leia like that, all right, in the sequel trilogies. And the more I think about it, the more I'm like, he would. And that's not to say he doesn't love Leia. This dude loves Leia probably with all his heart. But this dude just went through his late teens and early 20s hating a man that he then find out is his dad. All right. And then they have to fight some oppressive galactic government. And then not only that, when you think things are right and you're finally back on track, it all goes up in the flames. But the person that sends it up in flames is your own flesh and blood, your nephew, bro. That would break me, man. If especially it being Leia's kid. I'm not saying this is Luke's reasoning, but this would be mine, man. I wouldn't want to look at Leia again, not because I hate her or anything, it's because I just feel like I let my sister down,
But it's
like with every fiber of me.
it's so much more than that though, because Luke's vision was that training the Jedi perpetuated the cycle of violence that created the situation that caused this, that happened generation after generation after generation, this push and pull between Jedi and Sith, dark side and light side, the idea that like the Jedi had to force this balance and own the Force is what was causing that. And the idea that Skywalker's trying to manipulate the future and cause certain outcomes is what forces the worst of those outcomes to happen is what he was trying to escape, right? Like he went there to see what that future was going to be, and in trying to prevent it, he caused it. And he realized that like that responsibility was too great, and by even trying to tamper with it, he was only going to make things worse. So removing himself and the Jedi from that equation, balance could be achieved again. So it's like he was doing something actually heroic, I think, in his eyes, by saying, we're not going to do this again. The Jedi had it wrong because they allowed Anakin to do this, right? Like Anakin trying to prevent the things he was trying to prevent with his visions of the future caused the death of the Jedi Order. I did the same thing and it happened all over again. What's going to happen the next time?
And that is perfectly said because, and I hate to say this, Jedi fans who are listening, the Jedi are at least half of the problem. I hate to say it, as bad as the Sith are. And I know the Sith, are going around killing innocents and stuff like that. So I mean, I don't want to take away from the atrocities that the Sith are doing. I mean, they're evil, but the Jedi create a lot of the issues that, like you said, they end up having to fix, 10, 20 years later. All right. This is now a problem that, man, we kind of built up over the years, and now we're having to fix it. And I like how you say that, with especially with Luke's train of thought. He wants to break the wheel, right? Break the cycle. And people are so used to the cycle. When somebody comes around trying to break it, all of a sudden they're the bad guy now, or this isn't how it should be, right? Like
Yeah.
we've been living in this cycle for thousands of years, man. Like, does life suck under it? Yeah, but you know what? I'm used to it. This is life now to me, right? And I think that, not to blur fiction with reality, but I mean that's even just in real life. People are so used to the boot stepping on them, right? That when somebody finally wants to remove the boot off of you, but not only that, but take the boot off of the foot that was on you, it becomes a problem. I'm like, man, I love that boot on me, man. I know.
Yeah.
Right? It's like,
Yeah.
I put the boot back on me.
That's what I loved so much about Luke, because what Luke does on Octu, where he spends that time in exile and Rey confronts him about his views and he's forced to come up with a different way, is the same thing kind of Yoda goes through, right? Like Yoda spends those 20 years on Dagobah and says like I've got to figure out a different way. Luke does the same thing, and that's why I love so much his solution in The Last Jedi. right? Where it's like, I'm not going to show up and murder my nephew. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to come up with something else. And he does that noble sacrifice that I'm going to show up with nonviolence, which is what the Jedi should have been doing. I'm going to show up and I'm going to embrace my nephew with the truth, and I'm not going to hurt him, but I'm going to do it in a way that gives the people I care about the time they need to escape. And I'm going to, yes, it's going to cause me to force me to sacrifice my life, but that sacrifice is going to be worth it and it's going to be meaningful. And the story of that is going to spread that spark of hope across the galaxy. And without Luke making that sacrifice, which is why I think the ending of The Last Jedi is so important. And I know I've talked to some people who are so confused why we get that scene back on Canto Bight. Or I get so confused when people say Canto Bight could have been cut from the whole movie. And it's like, no, like if you think Canto Bight could have been cut from the movie, then you didn't understand the movie. Um, but we go back to Canto Bight, and you've got the kids from the stables playing with toys, telling the story of Luke Skywalker, and it's so inspiring. And then you see Temery Blagg grab the broom, and you see that Luke Skywalker's story is inspired not just the next generation, but without that, we don't get the moment where Lando shows up on Exegol with everyone after no one showed up to help them on Crate because there was no hope left in the galaxy because the First Order had put that boot on everyone after destroying Hosnian Prime and destroying like all of the functions of government and governance and everything that had made the galaxy function. And like that moment in Rise of Skywalker where they do show up on Exegol and it's just everyone harkens back to that moment in Phantom Menace that I love so much where Anakin just looks to his mom and says like, "Mom, you said the biggest problem in this universe is nobody helps each other." And Luke's sacrifice in The Last Jedi, his way of figuring out how to make the Jedi actually work in a way that erases or tries to erase or tries to come up with a way to erase the problems that marked them from the Acolyte to um, Ben Solo's destruction of Luke's temple is how they move on to the next phase to make a Jedi Order that would be not harmful, and it shows itself at Exegol where it unites everyone whether they have the Force or not. You know what I mean?
I think I am ready to say this on record so everybody can go back to this and be like, oh yeah, he said it. I almost feel like, is it Rian or Ryan Johnson? Is
Ryan,
his name?
Ryan,
It's Ryan.
Ryan.
Okay. I think I'm ready to say that Ryan Johnson probably gave us the most Jedi like thing that a Jedi can do on screen. He gave it to us like I don't know how best to say it, but if you catch what I'm trying to say, I feel like Luke
Oh,
did something that was
absolutely.
so Jedi like.
Yeah.
and 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 it pains me. I really, and I mean this. It pains me to see that fans don't understand that what Luke did is so Jedi like. Like, dude, if you are a fan of the Jedi, at least how, in my opinion, when you see what Luke did, like, bro, there's no way you can dislike what he did. That is the most Jedi thing ever.
No, it's exactly what he did. He turned the other cheek, right? Like he spared his enemy who was his nephew and and did exactly what a Jedi should do, right? Like they Luke had vowed, it seemed, to, you know, not um Luke had vowed to not pick up that saber again. Um and that was something that he just didn't do again. And what better way to do it with an imaginary saber, right? Like, what does a Jedi need a lightsaber for? Which is one of the things I loved in Ahsoka when Ezra's just like, no, man, you keep it. I don't need it. I've got the Force now.
And I think that's where it comes down to, though, where we as just an audience, right? We want to see pew pew pew, like laser swords, right? I mean, I do too, right? Like we all go crazy over the latest lightsaber duel. I mean, I do too. I'm guilty of it. I love a good lightsaber duel, but man, I tell my friends all the time too when they ask me what are some of my favorite parts of Star Wars. It's just the monologues, or some of the world building. That's to me, that's what I love to see. I love to know. Yeah, I like to see, dude's arm getting cut off in this epic lightsaber duel, but why is dude even in this lightsaber duel to begin with?
Yep.
Like what got him here? Like
Yeah.
why is he even willing to risk his entire life, in this fight? That's what I want to know why. Right. And and I think a lot of that gets tossed aside by being accused of being what filler, or just silly dialogue that's to me is like super important down the line, and like another story down the line, you're gonna be like, hey, why did this happen? Well, it's like, hey man, well they gave you like everything you needed to know, but you thought it was a waste of time, on screen, when they gave it to you. And I just think that's where we're at a lot, where we're I saw it with Andor, which I think Andor is one of the best shows. And I even think critically, I think me and you have talked about, I really don't pay too much attention to what critics or people say, but the reason I bring it up for Andor, I feel like critics and the audience both agree that Andor is like top of the line, right? But
Yeah.
even whenever you look at some of the criticism for Andor, the people who don't like it, they're like, it's boring. It's like it's too much talking. I'm like, man, like that's why it's so good.
Yeah.
Right? Like this, the monologues in this show, the conversations that people are having, right? Like Saw's conversation, his speech to Will, right?
Yeah.
Mon Mothma, her speech, and heck, even Luthen and I just had a brain freeze, but the lady, the Imperial ISB agent, whenever they first met, finally.
Dedra Miro.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, Miro. It's like those conversations to me are like on par with some of my favorite lightsaber duels, right? It's like,
Yeah.
man, like they're having lightsaber duels of words right now.
Yeah. No, they really were. And the lightsaber duels, George Lucas said it of special effects, but I think it's the same thing with lightsaber duels or blaster fights or whatever. You can just take special effects and replace it with lightsaber duels or blaster fights. But, he said yeah, a special effect, uh, is a tool, a means of telling a story, and a special effect without a story is a pretty boring thing. And I feel the exact same way about lightsaber duels and blaster fights and big spaceship combat. And that's why Star Wars is so great, is all of that stuff has a story meaning behind it, and you're invested in the characters. And I'm always so confused when people get mad at, say, Ryan Johnson in The Last Jedi, like he didn't give us a proper lightsaber fight, right? But I think two of my favorite lightsaber fights are in The Last Jedi, right? Like the throne room in The Last Jedi, where Kylo kills, Snoke, and the saber comes toward him, and Rey catches it, and they stand up and they have this moment of acknowledgement of each other and go, I think we're on the same team for a minute, and they trash those Praetorian Guard, is one of the most satisfying moments in cinema, like that I've ever had in a theater. And then the moment when Luke actually walks out after, if you remember an hour and a half prior when Luke says, "What do you think I'm going to do? Walk out, with a laser sword and face down the whole First Order alone?" And then he walks out of the base on Crate with a lightsaber to face the entire First Order alone. And then Ben goes down there and Luke just dodges every blow. And yeah, no two lightsabers crossed in that movie, but those are both lightsaber duels in a very technical sense. And they're both so riveting story and character wise that I don't care that the lightsabers didn't actually cross each other. It doesn't matter.
And I think that's the perfect example of where a lot of the general audience is probably at, because I have friends that I've put on Star Wars, and of course they like them for different reasons than us than me, right? Like no, none of us like Star Wars for the same reasons, right? And I'm not gonna lie to you, I have friends that really just like lightsaber, like Star Wars for the lightsaber duels, the fights, and that's it, right? And I'm sure you know people like that too,
Oh
right?
yeah.
And I don't think that's a problem. I really don't. Do I think that's the best thing Star Wars has to offer? No. But if someone loves Star Wars just for the fights, man, you're not going to be disappointed, right?
Yeah.
Like you're going to love this franchise. But the the build up to these fights to me are what makes Star Wars what it is. Because there are times where, yeah, I'm watching Star Wars, and really I mean this whenever we're watching like a story for the first time, right? Like where I'm watching it for the first time. I'll take Solo for example, because as a lot of people know on the Star Wars Guru page or whatever, Solo is actually my favorite of the Disney era Star Wars movies. Um, and especially for someone who I have Sith tattoos on me. I love the dark side. I love the Jedi too, but I guess what I'm trying to say is that I love lightsaber wielding individuals, right? I love Solo because of its lack of Force users and lightsabers. Granted, yeah, we see Maul at the end, right? But that movie stands out so much for me because of the lack of that, right? And you can almost say Rogue One too, but of course we have that epic scene with Vader at the end, which I
Yeah.
love. I'm not even going to use that as a knock against Rogue One because I love that, right? But just because Solo is so grounded, and it's something that I feel like I could live in, right? Because look, I'm not some saber wielding, force using badass. I'm not, all right. But you know what I could be? I could be a Lando, right? I could be a normal fella who uses his mouth to get him out of situations. And
Or
to
into them.
me, yeah, 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 yeah. Actually, that to be honest with you, and to me, that is the pure magic of what makes Star Wars Star Wars. Because if I want a good fight scene, I can watch any movie or franchise. It doesn't have to be Star Wars, right? I can watch anything to get a fight scene. But just the extra layers that come with it are to me what makes Star Wars stand out to other franchises. Because there's just so much going on. There's so much lore. There's so much, like real life um examples being thrown into Star
Yeah.
Wars. Because I don't want to quote George word for word because I don't even think I'm going to say it word for word. But there was an interview that he did years ago where he talks about like Star Wars is real. Of course you're like, what do you mean real? He's like, man, if you watch the original trilogy or the prequel trilogy, this is like real life stuff that's went on in our history, and I just put it into a space fantasy. A lot of what goes on in Star Wars is like real life,
Yeah.
and
No,
and people think it's silly when I say that, but it's like no, like this is like real life stuff right now.
it's shocking how much Andor, which, Andor season 2 was getting filmed, was mostly filmed during lockdown, during the pandemic, how much of like Gorman and the Gorman massacre and the way everything on Gorman worked out played out in Milwaukee or, with ICE, or how
Yeah,
much like Phantom Menace and the taxation of trade routes to outlying star systems is getting referenced so much with this situation in Iran with the Strait of Hormuz, right? Like it, it's just it's shocking how much like these stories continue to be relevant Um, Switching gears a little bit because we are running out of time. I want to ask what your most what your prediction is on Mando and Grogu about whether or not we think we're going to see a lightsaber in that, and what you're like most excited about as far as the Mando and Grogu movie.
Man, so I'm super excited for Mando and Grogu. I know, it's probably hard to tell on the Star Wars Guru pages or anything because Maul's going on, and Maul's just my favorite character, right? So I've been posting a lot about him. But the Mandalorian, I think, is special to a lot of people because what this was, the first live action TV series for Star Wars, right? And and nobody knew how it was going to end up, right? I mean, it could have been a disaster. But I feel like it was universally loved, which is rare these days. And granted, I know it had its critics, right? But for a big portion of the fan base to be like, "Hey, the Mandalorian is legit," to me that means something, right? And I feel like this movie has the opportunity to give us something really special. Do I think there's going to be a lightsaber duel in it? Just piggybacking off of what I said about Solo, I'm hoping not. I know that's crazy to hear from the Star Wars group, but like I'm hoping not because I like I'm starting to see I like Star Wars stories where it's just your regular average man or lady, right? And I know Star Wars is known for the Force and all that, but I really feel like this can be
Well,
an opportunity to open up to a different type of storytelling with Star Wars.
we could still get the dark saber though,
Yeah, yeah, we could. Yeah.
and
And and,
that's
and, and if we're counting that, then yeah, I do think chances are a little bit higher.
yeah, because that is definitely a different sort of situation, but that is still a lightsaber that was still constructed by a Jedi. Um, and that's been part and parcel. That has been a major component of the Mandalorian show. And Bo-Katan, I would be surprised if we don't get an update about what's going on Mandalore, based on where season three ended.
I do think though, and this is my prediction, that this movie will give us some lore about. I always find it interesting that we get lore for like Old Republic, Sith, Jedi history in stories that you never would think that we're gonna get it from, right?
Yeah.
So I think that we are going to get some lore. I don't know what kind of lore. So like I said, I'm not an insider. I have no insider knowledge. I don't talk to anybody who's in the know-how. But I really just feel like this movie is going to give us some lore that us fans are going to be like talking about after the movie is premiered, and we're going to be like, man, we learned that in the Mandalorian and Grogu.
I'm continually surprised by that. And if there's a team that can keep anything secret, it's this team. Like, I remember so I went to the first press thing for The Mandalorian, and this was back, like, when the show first aired, and they showed us they took the press out. We went out to LA, and we went and they showed us like some clips from the first. They showed us like 10 or 15 minutes from some assorted episodes. And they showed us most of the Mudhorn fight. Um, but they did not show us anything about Grogu. Grogu was a complete surprise. They didn't screen complete episodes for the press, nothing. And keeping Grogu as a surprise cost them a lot of money because in order to keep anything a surprise, you can't make toys of it, right? Because the lead time to make toys of stuff needs to be so long that like inevitably something's going to leak, right? Like I can't even tell you, you probably know this, right? Like if something's going to leak, it's going to end up on a Lego toy leaked like so long before you intend for it to come out. So for the fact that Grogu didn't get leaked until everyone saw it on the night is astounding. So if there's something that's going to be shown or blow everybody's minds with this movie, if anybody can keep it a secret, it's these guys because they were intentional enough and had the buy-in of Lucasfilm to say, I know, look at how adorable this guy is. We know it's going to cost you millions of dollars, probably tens of millions of dollars, to not do any toys or plushes or marketing or licensing around Grogu. But guess what? We can't do any because we've got to keep him a secret that, like, these guys are going to be able to keep a secret.
Do you think something like that is happening for the Mandalorian? Do you think there's something that we're just going to be blown away from that we're going to be like,
I
can't
mean,
believe they were hiding that from us?
I feel like that's been the case for every Star Wars movie, right? Like I felt that way for um I felt that way for all of them going back to like Phantom. Well, that's not exactly true. Like Phantom Menace, they released the novelization and the soundtrack like before the movie came out, so it was like, oh, Qui-Gon's dead and so is Darth Maul like 2 weeks before the movie came out. But that was licensing, right? But that was
Yeah.
also the difference then to now, though, was that that's how George was paying for the movie, right? Like he was selling all those licensing agreements in advance to finance the film. Um, and now Lucasfilm can get away with not having to do that in advance, and they've made all their money back plus some on Grogu, right? Like, yeah, they lost that initial amount, that initial burst. Um, but like every movie, like Solo, like they kept Darth Maul quiet, right?
Yeah, that was a surprise for me.
Oh
Welcome
man.
surprise.
Rogue One, they kept Vader in the hallway scene quiet, right? Like Last Jedi, Luke's death, they kept quiet. Um, Rise of Skywalker, like there were rumors that Ben was gonna die maybe, or how are they gonna handle Carrie, things like that. Like, but like when it all finally came together, I think that was all a big surprise. Ahsoka, like we knew Hayden was gonna be on the show, but we had no idea how he was gonna be used, right? And the ending of the show where Hayden's Force Ghost was there, like when we saw the episode, I think it was episode 4 where Hayden's ghost, like Hayden was there, but not like there. He was like in her head. And that was not so much of a surprise. That seemed very normal, but like actually seeing him in the animated Clone Wars outfit, that
Yeah.
felt like a surprise. Um, Leia on Kenobi, right? Like that was a shock. They kept that quiet. Um, I didn't think they'd ever go to like young Leia, right?
And I'm glad they did because
Yeah,
I feel like she was so important to that story.
yeah. Andor season 2, they kept recasting Bail Organa quiet. I mean, that wasn't a big surprise, but it was still something that was like, huh. Um, like, yeah, no, Lucasfilm is still very good at keeping secrets when they need to, and they've done it pretty consistently.
I even
Yoda.
think the whole Luke thing was kept secret from the Mandalorian, right? With like
Oh
Plo
yeah.
Koon, artwork and shit stuff.
Yeah, no, even on the set, like Katie Sackhoff, I got to interview her for I I don't I don't remember what it was I got to interview her for, but I asked her about that. Maybe it was Mando season 3, asking her about season 2. But she said that like even on the day, Filoni told her it was Plo Koon. And I like me, like personally, if Filoni told me it was Plo Koon, I would tell him he was full of shit. Um, but that's just like I know Filoni's history with Plo Koon, and I can imagine Katie Sackhoff just not being as entrenched in a Filoni's nerdery of Plo Koon or even Clone Wars enough to care who Plo Koon is. Um, but yeah, I don't know. But I'm excited for Mando and Grogu though, because like we've got Zeb. I'm really excited about Zeb.
I'm excited for Embo.
Yeah, no, that's I thought it was interesting they brought back like one of the bounty hunter, like the one bounty hunter from the Clone Wars that Dave Filoni voices.
Yeah. Do we know if is Dave voicing him for the movie?
We don't know, but I can't see why they wouldn't. So far, if a character has been like CG rendered or behind makeup, they've brought back the voice actor. Um, or behind significant makeup, or like digital makeup or
Mhm.
appliances, right? Like the only real exception in that has been Ahsoka and Hera. Um, like everyone else, they've brought back the original voice actor, right? Like we've got Steve Bloom for Zeb, we've had Corey Burton for Cad Bane. Um, that's not well. I mean, um, D. Bradley Baker didn't come back for the clones or whatever, but they've had, you know, why would you bring him back in live action? Because Tamara Morrison
Yeah.
is sort of reprising that part, right?
And that I can understand. That I can understand.
Yeah. But for the most part, yeah, like aside from those two face characters, it seems like um characters that originated in animation, they've brought over the voice actors. And it's not like Embo's a man of many words.
I just hope that we get to see him throw his hat around one time. They gotta at least do that at least one time. You're not bringing Imbo in to not show off his hat.
Yeah. I yeah. No, I'd be interested to see how big of a part Embo has. I wouldn't be surprised if Embo's just a very quick part too.
And I'm okay with that. I know there will be some people who are like, well, I'll bring them in if they're only for a small part. Okay. So I
Like,
already know they expect that.
not all parts are big parts. This is Star Wars, right? Like, I mean, Boba Fett was never a big part, which is always why I've always been surprised that Boba Fett was so popular, right? Like he had like 8 minutes of screen time total across the classic trilogy. Um, Actually, the thing I'm more excited about for Mando and Grogu than anything is Rod of the Hutt getting some sort of closure. Um, the first Star Wars movie that I really got to take my son, who's 20, he'll be 24 the day Mando and Grogu comes out. The first Star Wars movie I got to take him to a midnight screening to was the Clone Wars movie. He was like 4 or 5. He was 5 when that came out. Um, 6. He was 6 when that came out, and 5 or 6, depending on how the his birthday worked out versus the release date. And he just loved it. Like Clone Wars was our thing. He was like 6 to like a teenager over the course of the show. We got to, we watched it every week. We really loved it. He got to go with me to Lucasfilm when um we went to see the premiere of what we thought might be the series finale when season 5 ended, when Cartoon Network canceled it
Mhm.
um during the sale. He went with me to go to that screening with cast and crew. It was something that was really meaningful for us, and every single time Disney announced something or Lucasfilm announced something about one of the new movies, the first question out of his mouth for the last decade has been, so are they going to, like, who's the villain? Who's this or who's that? Like, are they finally going to wrap up Stinky's uh, story? And when they announced that Jeremy Allen White was going to be Rod of the Hutt and that he was finally going to get his story wrapped up, like, I can't even tell you how excited my kid was. Um, whose name is Anakin, by the way. But he was just so like, are you serious? Like, are you really serious? And like every time they've posted pictures, like new pictures of Stakey, he's just like, this is going to be the best movie ever, just because they're they're finally making good on the promise of Jabba the Hutt's kid. So I'm really excited for that, and I'm excited for him. And it's weird to think that kids that were that young when the Clone Wars movie came out theatrically are now in their mid 20s and
Yeah,
really
when you were
excited for
saying that,
this.
I was getting depressed, to be honest with you. I was like, oh my gosh, it's really been almost 20 years.
Yeah. Well, I mean, um, Lucasfilm Animation celebrated its 20th anniversary last year, and that's how long they've been working on Clone Wars. And the Clone Wars movie came out in 2008. So that came out 18 years ago.
I was into like you said before, I got into it late, so around like 17, 18. When the Clone Wars came out. If it's 2008, that means I would have been 19. So the last year, of me being a teenager. And then what, season seven came out in what, 2019, 2020 or something around there. That means Clone Wars. I got into Clone Wars. I mean, we're speaking technical terms as a teenager at 19, and it finished in my 30s. Wow. All right. Thanks for that.
There's nothing
Thanks for
like Star Wars to make you feel old. I mean, like I
that.
go through the same thing, right? Like I was 18 when Phantom Menace came out, and I was waiting in line for Phantom Menace, right? Like I was a junior in high school when the special editions came out, and I skipped school to go wait in line for them. Um, which was like one of just the best experiences. And every once in a while I'll have to go back and go like, oh, like my kid, Anakin was actually he was born the week after Attack of the Clones came out. Um, and so like he's as old as Attack of the Clones, and he's turning 24 next month,
Huh.
which means Attack of the Clones is 24. And Revenge of the Sith is his favorite Star Wars movie. And that's, Revenge of the Sith came out in 2005. It's 21 year, Revenge of the Sith is old enough to get into a bar.
Yeah. Wild. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And it's weird that Clone Wars is that old too, because Clone Wars feels like the new kids thing, but we've had so much Clone Wars and so much animated content and so much of what the new era of Star Wars is built on is everything George built in Clone Wars, right? Like Ahsoka, Mando, like Mando season 3 feels like an extra season of Clone Wars.
Oh yeah, it's so Clone Wars coded.
Yeah. Um and so like really to kind of not to understand it because I think they do a really good job of like any movie, any TV show, you can just watch just that, right? But like if you really want to like dive deep into it, you've got to start with Clone Wars. And it's hard to think, yeah, it's been around almost 20 years.
Star Wars is almost more of an animated franchise than it is a live action.
Yeah, no, it's funny when people ask about like when people think about like, Dave Filoni has been responsible for far more hours of Star Wars content than George. Um, people think about the music. Kevin Kiner has scored more Star Wars music than anyone else alive. Um, John Williams set the tone of it, but you think about all the music on Maul Shadow Lord that has all of those hallmarks of John Williams, but it's Kevin Kiner and his kids. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
and they've been doing it for almost 20 years.
It's just crazy to think how, I mean, the torch really has just been passed down to the next generation, and it's gonna keep going that way.
Yeah. No, it's weird. It's weird thinking about it too, because like when I started doing all of this Star Wars stuff, like I remember like it's weird. I remember some of the first conventions I was going to, like the Star Wars actors that were signing autographs and hanging out were, you know, like I think one of the first conventions I went to, like Phil Brown, who was the original Uncle Owen, was signing autographs. And it's like that guy hasn't been alive for 30 years, like
Yeah.
um the point is I'm getting old um every day, and time needs to slow down, as long as it doesn't mean more waiting for Star Wars, because I don't think I can handle that. But
Yeah, I hate to say something so depressing, but we will unfortunately die one day and Star Wars will
yeah,
continue without us.
that was that was actually I was actually talking to somebody about this the other day. Like, I had to actually, I think that was one of the hardest things about having to deal with the Lucas's sale to Disney. Um, and the idea that like Star Wars is just going to keep going is that when Lucas was in charge of it, it felt like Star Wars was going to be this finite thing that I could consume,
Yep.
and that it would be done at some point, and that I would just be able to know everything there was about Star Wars. But that when Disney bought Lucasfilm and Lucasfilm made it apparent that Star Wars would be going forever, I had to sort of come to terms in a very existential way that there was no such thing about as knowing everything there was to know about Star Wars anymore, because it was going to outlive me. I'd never be able to see all there was to see about Star Wars anymore. That's just not a thing I can look forward to anymore.
Yep. And it's bittersweet to think that though. 'Cause
Yeah.
I'm happy. I'm happy that that will be the case, but I'm also sad that there will be Star Wars movies and series that I will never be able to watch.
But there's something exciting about that too, knowing that like I get excited imagining what it's going to look like 100 years from now, right? Like the same way I wonder. I imagine George Lucas is excited about that in a way that somebody like maybe Mary Shelley couldn't know. Like, there's no way she could have known that like she was going to write Frankenstein, and then people would remix it and reinterpret it for 200 years, and we would get 80 different film versions of it and versions of it on stage, and that people would um, interpret her words and all the brilliant things that she put down in that one book, and that it would make her, you know, her ideas and the things she had to say sort of immortal. And I love seeing every new iteration of that come out. And so there's got to be something exciting for George about that, right? That he really has created this modern mythology that's going to outlive him in ways that he could never possibly imagine.
And I think that is the beauty of storytelling, to be honest with you. Because, like you said, like George will forever be immortal because of this. And not even just George, but even some of the newer players in the game, Dave Filoni. I mean, these people are going to be remembered forever whenever it comes to Star Wars. Kathleen Kennedy as well too. Shout out to her.
Yeah.
Uh, you know,
I mean,
and
she was going to anyway because of all of her work with like E.T., the Indiana
yeah,
Jones movies. Like all of her work with Spielberg had already done that for her, but with Star Wars, it just kind of put it over the top.
and before we wrap things, I just want to say this on record too, since we brought her up, man. Kathleen Kennedy's legacy in Star Wars should be something to be proud of. I hope you're
Yeah.
watching, Kathleen, or listening. I really do. And if you are, um, man, I very much hope. And matter of fact, I know you're proud of the work that you did with Lucasfilm. Uh, she took some risks, which I think everybody in this position should do, right? I'm thankful and very grateful for the stories that she put out there, the people that she allowed to tell them, and and I am sad, that she's gone, but I'm also very happy, looking forward to, Dave's era as well too. But I just want it known and to be put on record that the Star Wars guru, he is definitely very happy with uh, Kathleen's, leadership with Lucasfilm. Nobody's perfect. George wasn't perfect either. You know, I'm not saying everything I liked. Under Kathleen, I didn't like everything that was under George's umbrella too. I mean, at least when it came to the movies and the Clone Wars, I did too. But just under his leadership in general as the company, you know, uh, everybody's gonna have some ups and some downs. But overall, I think Kathleen did a wonderful job, and I'm glad with the legacy that she has left for Dave now to take over and for him to continue with what she did and what George did.
Yeah, no, well said. But unfortunately, we've already gone over time, which means like we're way out of time, and we didn't even like scratch the surface of what we wanted to talk about. So we'll have to have you on again, and it needs to be way less than 2 years between now and the next time you're on. But for folks who are listening and don't know exactly where to find you, where can people find you?
Well, I'm most active on Facebook, so I'll really just drop my Facebook. You can find me on the book, The Star Wars Guru, and I'm just there to enjoy and love Star Wars. I would love to see y'all there.
Um, as for me, folks can find me at swankmatron.com or across social media at swankmatron, or you can find me making comments on Steven's Star Wars Guru page occasionally. Um, and as far as Full of Sith goes, you can go to fullofsith.com and listen to the entire back catalog of episodes that have been going not as long as, you know, not as long as the Clone Wars, but certainly back um, at least I think we're on year 14. I don't know. I've lost count. Um, but we've got more than 700 releases over the years for you to listen to at fullofsith.com. You can send us email at holocron@fullofsith.com, and you can rate and review the show wherever it is you listen to it. Be sure to tell your friends about it. We always love that. So for Stephen Tillman, the Star Wars guru, for super producer Mike Pilot, for Holly Fry, who couldn't be here with us this week, I'm Brian Young, and the Force will be with you always.
Sir, if you'll not be meeting me, I'll close down for a while.